Okay, so today I'm going over these two cameras. Now the reason why is probably why you clicked on the thumbnail. I'm selling one of these cameras. Now which camera am I selling? I'll answer that in a bit, but first of all, I'll go over the features. These are two very similar, but also quite different cameras. Okay, so what do these cameras have in common? First of all, they're film cameras. Second of all, they're medium format cameras. And third of all, they shoot 6 by 4.5 as their aspect ratio. But beyond that, they're two very different cameras. Now, this here is the Mamiya 645. This was my second medium format camera. I got this in 2023, not long after starting my new job and getting a nice little payout from my last job, and I really wanted a medium format camera. Now this came with three lenses, an 80mm, 120mm, and a 210mm. Most of the time when I use it, I tend to use the 80mm, mainly because I'm taking portraits with people and doing more close-up photography. Now to load this camera, you have to go ahead and push the back down and then pop it open. And that is first of all one of the first struggles that I discovered when dealing with it. Then you take the back out and you go ahead and you move the spool from the top into the bottom, which frankly is not very easy to do. And then you put your new film in here at the top, and then you wrap it around with making sure that the black is showing against here, otherwise you'll be exposing to the backing paper, and then folding it into the back here. Once that's done, you go ahead and load your film into here, and then you close your back and you're able to fire. Now, the thing about both of these cameras is they are semi-electronic, with the Mamiya 645 being more electronic of the two. Now, when I got this Mamiya 645, I thought I was getting one with a waste-level viewfinder. So at the time, I really didn't know too much about medium format cameras. I now know a lot more. This isn't a waste-level viewfinder, this is a prism finder. I didn't understand at the time that they would come as different finders. I just thought it was all one mechanism and it was hard to tell from the pictures. I got this for about $600 New Zealand. It's a reasonable price for a medium format camera of them, and for a Mamiya 645, I think this is the original series. And with three lenses, I think that was a pretty good value. It did state that the prism finder is dead, and this is quite a common feature with a lot of the prism finders from the Mamiya 645s, is that often they're dead. I also find this one quite incredibly dark, so it does take out some of my enjoyment to use it. And of course, the reason why it's quite dark, apart from the fact I think it is a little bit darker than just what it should be, is the fact that often I'm shooting at f16 and the bright sunny day, sunny 16 rule and everything like that. So what that means is that it has a little mechanism right here, which goes ahead and it adjusts so that it shows you how bright an image will be, but that feature is hella annoying in my opinion. I don't like it. It doesn't actually help you out, I think. That's just one of the little downsides with this camera that I have found. One of the other downsides with this camera is that with the prism finder and with the shutter, when I tried my very first roll, which was a roll of 400D, my lab and I found that you have to have the shutter dials exactly the same for you to be able to fire correctly. Apparently that is a feature of these cameras. However, since then, I think the prism finder's properly died, because I can now just adjust down here and I don't have a problem with that. I can just use that, and that's controlling my shutter speed. Having to set the dial on both is quite problematic in my opinion. Or I believe maybe actually it was the red dot. You had to put this as the red dot, and then if you had the prism finder on, that controlled it. I can't remember, it doesn't do that anymore, but it was doing something similar to that, and it was a pain in the ass. The other little negative feature that I had was at least in the beginning. Not so much now, because you can see here the little green light, it's going. But when I first got this camera, it was just chewing through the battery. This battery sat in here for quite a long time now, and I don't have an issue. I think it's because, as I mentioned, the prism finder is fully dead now. So other than just being optical and then you can view through it, it doesn't have any metering or does not take any power out of the system. So now the battery lasts a lot longer. Those are some of the problems that I've had with this camera. Now, this camera here also has some problems. This here is the Fujica 645. I picked this up in Japan, in Osaka, after my Mamiya C220 was dropped inside a camera bag. The strap just gave, and all of a sudden the camera bag hit the ground right outside the Imperial Palace in Japan. And then I started having issues where it wouldn't fire correctly. I managed to get that Mamiya C220 fixed in Shanghai, but because on my trip, which was quite a large trip, I had film set up at different locations. What that meant is I needed a medium format camera, and so I managed to pick up this one in Osaka for about, again, $600. So some downsides to this camera. It's not really a downside, but at least it is at first. You have to get used to it. This camera here is not orientated the same way. As you can see here, it's not orientated landscape, it's orientated portrait, and at first that was not something that I was looking for. I'm quite used to the fact that this camera here does that. Yeah, it doesn't really bother me now anymore. In fact, I quite look forward to shooting with it when it's in that kind of orientation, mainly because I'm doing a lot more portrait work now than what I was doing at the time. And at the time I was wanting to do a lot more cityscapes, landscapes when I was traveling, not so much taking photos of people. Other downsides to this camera is that you've got to be really careful when you are putting the film into here. For one, you can forget to pop these back in. This allows the spool to pop in, but what happens is sometimes I forget and then one of them sticks out, and then it is a problem to get it to sit back in. As you can see here, imagine that the door's already closed and I've loaded in the film. Yeah, that's quite problematic. What that means is that I just have to be more careful with that. It's the same thing with the Fujica 690, which is right behind me over here. Yeah, so that's one of the downsides to this camera. The other downside to this camera, and this is something I didn't realize at the time and I had to do a bit of research to confirm, because there are quite a few models of the Fujica 645, just like there are quite a few models of the Mamiya 645, is that the Fujica 645 is not a rangefinder, just a viewfinder. Just like those Kodak disposables, it's not actually showing you what's in focus, it's just showing you what's going to mainly be in the image with the little lines. Yeah, that is a bit of a thing to get around. So this is a zone focus only camera. You cannot see the image that you are truly taking, and not only that, you can't see what's in focus. So it has a range of 1 meter all the way up to 5 meters, which isn't a lot, and then infinite. And there are plenty of situations where I would like to use this camera, and even like the distance between here and this table is too short a distance. And you know, a lot of tables at restaurants are like that. So if I'm with my friends and I want to take a little portrait shot of them as we're meeting up and just having a little dinner, this here, I can't photograph them without them being out of focus. And that is quite frustrating. The other issue with this camera is that it has a max shutter speed of 1 second, which is quite problematic for me if I want to go ahead and do any longer exposures. It's fine if I'm shooting infrared in the middle of the day, but I have had scenarios where that has made an impact. When I was traveling, as part of this trip that I was doing at the time, I was going to do some long exposures on medium format, and I just couldn't. I could do a few nighttime shots at 1 second, but that didn't work out very well most of the time. And very recently I was doing a trip up Mount Taranaki, and inside one of the resorts that I was staying at, they have a walking area that was really beautiful. And I really wanted to try do a trichrome shot inside this walking track. Unfortunately, it was later in the day and I couldn't shoot more than 1 second. And if you've shot infrared, you know that infrared is 1 second at f8 under normal conditions. So I tried my luck and just exposed, but nothing came through on that image. So if I was able to expose for longer, that would be great. But this here doesn't even have a B or T mode. So you are much more limited with what you can shoot. And both cameras have a max shutter speed of 500th of a second. So talking about the f-stop for a second, the other thing that this has that limits you from being able to photograph a lot of things is the fact that it is f5.6, which doesn't allow as much light in as what you would possibly need in many scenarios. So that is some of the downside features with this camera. Now with both cameras, they do have some similar features between them. Both of them are 500th of a second shutter speed. Both of them have a flash mount, so you can go ahead and fire directly with a flash. I have done it with both, and my flash might be more problematic than some other flashes. I had no problem with this one, slight issues with this one, but then again, like I said, it might have been my flash at the time, which is a little bit older and I think from the 80s or 90s and is a little problematic. I've gone over the downsides of both cameras. Now let me talk about the upsides. With this camera here, you can go ahead and change quite a few things on it. For example, you can go ahead and you can change the viewfinder, which if I just do this, if I had the other viewfinder, I could pop it on top, and I have seen someone around with one of these and it does look quite beautiful. So instead you can view downwards and get that as well, which I quite often like to do. The other benefit with this is it has more than one place to fire with. So you can either fire with the button here or you can fire with the button here, and both of them will trigger the camera. The other benefit with this camera here that I really do like is the fact that you can go ahead and shoot some pretty long exposures without needing a cable. So it has a 1 second, a 2 second, a 4 second, and an 8 second exposure time, which I've used. I was shooting the fireworks with one camera and I only had one shutter cable at the time. And then I was shooting with this and I was able to put it at 8 seconds and I was shooting 800 ISO, and it was just able to take the shots, expose them correctly, shot for 8 seconds. And it just meant that in that scenario, it gave me a bit more versatility. So this camera here has quite a bit more versatility than this camera, including the fact that it can do multiple exposures. And I've used those multiple exposures to take photos like this. So those are some of the cool features that the Mamiya 645 has. So the Mamiya 645 also has the ability to have multiple lenses. So unlike this camera here, which has only got a fixed lens, I can put multiple lenses on here. And I have 3 for this camera that I've already mentioned. So that was some upsides for the Mamiya 645. Now, as for the Fujica 645, it also has some things that it does better than the Mamiya 645. What are those? Well, like I said earlier, I kind of do like the portrait view now. It just is a little bit different, and I often shoot a lot of landscape work. So switching up to a more portrait view kind of gives me something a little bit different than some of my other cameras. So it helps this camera stand out. The other benefit to this camera is the fact that unlike this one, it has a meter on the inside and the meter works. Now the meter is based through the viewfinder here. And if, say, for example, you're shooting with a filter, all you need to do is meter with the filter on here and then just wait until you've got your measurements correct, which is a little bit finicky because you have to go here, hold the filter, and then look at your settings and try figure out what it needs to be and keep on adjusting them until it's correct. It has a little circle in the middle with either a plus or a negative to denote whether it's under or overexposed. Once the little circle is just on its own, then you have got a correct exposure, and then you can put your filter onto here. Now the other little thing that actually I should just mention is that this here is a 49mm thread. For me that's quite handy, and the reason is quite simple. I already have 49mm threads for some of my other 35mm cameras, so the fact that I can just go ahead and put a 49mm thread on this and just not have to buy extra filters like I've had to do with this one, which is 58mm, is just, you know, a little cost saving bonus, so there is that. The other feature that I really like about this, and also sometimes dislike, is that this has a 40mm wide lens. What that's equivalent to is probably somewhere between 20 to 24, probably around like 22 millimeters. That means that it's quite wide. Now the downside to that is sometimes it's too wide. If you're doing street photography, you have to get a lot more closer to your subject to really get them to stand out in the image. Other than that, I think that it's actually really handy. If you're anywhere like 5 meters or closer to a subject, create some really striking imagery. However, if you start going anywhere beyond 5 meters, especially across a road, I find that sometimes the subject is a little too diminished, in my opinion. Now, the other thing about this lens is this might be the sharpest lens I own. Sharpness is not everything, and there are plenty of photos that I love that have been taken on my other cameras like this one. However, that being said, this lens here is ridiculously sharp, and I shot one of the sharpest films that I've ever shot, which was like Kodak X-Pan, which is a film that used to be the most grainless and most defined film that Kodak ever made, and shot with a combo of that film stock and this lens. Those photos were undeniably sharp, almost to the point they could hurt your eyes. Another little tiny feature that I like with this camera is the lock mechanism here. It's quite easy. It just means that I can just pop it here, whereas the one on the Mamiya, I have to go ahead and do this, and it's a bit more finicky, and it's a bit, I struggle a little bit because it's just not that very big. So I am afraid to accidentally fire the shutter, which so far I haven't done, but could definitely happen at some point in the future. So I've gone over the key features of both of these cameras, both their ups and their downs. But which camera am I selling? That is what you wanted to know. And well, you may have guessed it, you may have not, but I'm selling this one. Now, originally when I bought this Fujica 645, I said to my partner, it's a temporary camera, I'm just getting it so I can go ahead and take my photos because my C220 is not working. And I guess I lied, or past me lied anyway. This camera is the one that I'm going to be keeping, and there's one main reason, and the reason is not something that I've discussed yet, though many would be able to figure it out. Weight. This camera here is heavy. It isn't exactly what I wanted either. There are a few key features that are missing from this, but essentially between the fact that this isn't the right finder, but more importantly, this thing is quite heavy. In fact, I think it might be even heavier than my C220. And that's a problem for me. If I'm gonna have a heavy camera, I want to get the best out of it, and that usually means like a larger negative. But if I want to go ahead and take something and not have too much weight, then I want to go for something lighter. And I've found time and time again when I've wanted to go do a project, like recently traveling up a mountain, I could have taken this, and I did think about taking it, but I ended up going with this because it was just simply a weight thing. I'm climbing up a mountain for 3 hours. I don't really want a kg, 2 kgs, or however heavy this is in my backpack along with the other cameras. My other cameras that are heavy, like my Fujica 690, those at least come with the benefit of larger negatives, whereas this takes only 645, which isn't the biggest of the medium format negative sizes. In fact, it's the smallest. Whereas this here is just light. It's lighter than some of my 35mm cameras, mainly because it's a mix of plastic and a little bit of steel, but it is just incredibly light. It's so much more portable and just easier to travel with that right now I am packing for a trip to China and Hong Kong and it is a no-brainer to take this camera with me. This here is just too finicky for my usage at the moment, and when I want to deal with something finicky, I want to get something more out of it. Now that being said, I do like the Mamiya 645. I think they are great cameras. However, I want to go ahead and get a Pro Mamiya 645. Like I said, this is missing a few features that I would want. One of them is the wasteful viewfinder. It just makes for great content, especially when you do what I do. But also, more importantly, I find that when I have film in here, I either have to burst through and shoot all the roll, or I'm waiting quite a while to go ahead and shoot a different film stock in it. And it's just kind of problematic for me, where I would sometimes want to do a project with this camera and do other projects at the same time. So what I want to do is sell this camera, and I'll just sell it here in New Zealand at first. If I can't find a buyer, I'll then sell it on like eBay. What I want to do is then go ahead and get the Pro. The Pro is just like the RB in the fact that you have switchable backs. That will make it a more usable camera for me. I have seen a few around for sale, but I'm not in a big rush. And the reason why I'm not in a big rush is because I have this. This will do me for now and is more than capable of taking a great image. And sometimes you don't need 1,000 lenses to go ahead and be a photographer. Sometimes you just need one camera. And for me, at the moment, I just need one 645 camera. And so the winner at the moment is the Fujica 645, and the loser is the Mamiya 645. Now remember, this is my personal preference and about what my needs are as a photographer, because it's not stating which is the better camera, as they both have features that are good and bad. This is just something that I need to do at the moment. And this is the first time that I'm selling one of my film cameras. I do take quite a bit of time to choose exactly what I want. And unfortunately for this Mamiya 645, it doesn't meet those criteria. As always, it's been real, guys. Until next time.